Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder, and we are broadcasting from the beautiful Dillon State Park here in East Central Ohio. And I'd like to remind all of you to please press the follow button. You'll be notified 1 hour prior to the start of each show. The music you hear at the beginning and end of each show is performed by your host, and CDs are available on request. Tonight, we're speaking with Solaris Blue Raven. She has a fantastic book. It's called Program by Deception. I have the remote series too, and it's really hard to describe. It's one of these really fascinating books which kind of takes a different look at things and takes a different look at our society and our belief systems and what's going on in the world, and I actually think it's very accurate in many ways, and it has very similar things to what I found in studying other material that I think is really interesting, and we're going to talk about that tonight as well. But let me go ahead and bring Solaris onto the show. Solaris, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well, Mark. How are you?
Well, I'm burning the candle at both ends. I had a little musical event out of the state this morning.
Nice.
But it's not that far. It's only about an hour and a half or 2 hour drive, and I made it back, and I had a million things to do before I even started preparing for this show. But, you know, there's so much interesting information in your book, and there's so many analogies and intersections between some of the stuff I've studied in the Billy Meyer case. And there's also a really interesting YouTube movie that's called UFOs in the Bible. And one of the guys that's real instrumental in bringing that movie about was a guy named Patrick Cook, who I've had on the show before. So I'm going to play some sections from that movie and discuss the different things in your book. And I've been reading Program by Deception, and there are a lot of bombshells in there. So I want to start out with one of them right away. And you state, one must realize all you have been taught for centuries is a lie. And in many respects, I've come to the same conclusion. So I wondered if you could elaborate on that statement.
Sure. Well, basically, that's the truth. We have been programmed by deception, basically. Since we were born, we've been conditioned into a false reality based on a false collective and false belief systems. And a lot of those belief systems were driven by political figures, religious figures, and all those figures are controlled and manipulated by their own egos with no connection to any universal celestial guidance whatsoever. So I think people need to understand that most of everything they've been taught in any form or design has been censored. They've been subjected to their own kind of mind control throughout the centuries, and it's gotten worse. It's gotten just so much worse these days.
What do you mean by a false collective?
The false collective is a collective based on what I would say entity control. There's no real source connection. There's no connection to the higher self oversoul. There's no true celestial archives of true knowledge or a true database of information based on the galactic higher consciousness energies opposed to man's version of reality. So you have a split there insofar as the information goes. So that's pretty much what the false collective is about. It's an illusion. It has no real anchor or substance in any form or design. And a lot of it, everything is energy and consciousness in motion. Well, this is just kind of like a bleed-through effect. So we're dealing with a lot of information that's really not based on truth, but based on a false collective of what I'd say almost like disembodied entities. I don't even want to call them spirits.
And do you think your bad experience with mind control in some ways is actually positive? And maybe what I mean by positive is because if you didn't go through this, do you think you would have learned as much as you have?
Yeah, I agree with that insofar as it opened my eyes in a huge way. Insofar as just knowing about the synthetic telepathy and then having to break it down as an investigator and doing the research, that really cued me to what the bigger picture was about insofar as technology goes and how it's being misused. And also what their agenda was insofar as trying to control and manipulate my belief systems, because with certain belief systems there's a certain level of consciousness and frequency and vibration. And when people think a certain thought, it's associated with a vibrational code. So if you're thinking in their feedback, in their linear way of communicating, it sometimes warps the configuration of your own celestial design. So you do run into problems. And I think I ran into a few problems with that when I was first inducted. But I did learn a lot. I learned a lot about what was valid and what wasn't valid, what they were trying to do to control, manipulate my memory banks, which were based on their version of a reality that wasn't truth-based. So I learned a great deal. But also I was very, very lucky to have done the ascension work and the spiritual work before they tagged me with a communication system, because I had that as my benchmark. I already had the universe and the higher consciousness and that celestial energy anchored, which allowed me to keep ascending and keep riding the waves, even though they were very dramatic and warped.
Synthetic telepathy is really an interesting concept because with this technology, they actually beam thoughts into your mind. And in your case, if I remember correctly, you were actually being toyed with by a group of guys in a rock band who had somehow gotten control of some really advanced technology from some government agency. I don't know what government agency it was, and maybe it's best we don't say. But can you tell us a little bit about what happened to you again, in case there are people listening that didn't hear our other show, and kind of describe what it's like when you experience synthetic telepathy?
Well, synthetic telepathy, I mean, for a true clairvoyant, we always have the natural ability of hearing on a higher frequency, but it's not like this. This is basically what I'll explain it as. They map your electromagnetic fields, they map your brain waves, your neural circuitry, and they interface it onto a communication system in an underground area, in a covert area with live agents, live handlers, with an auto-response feedback. So you'll get a ping of live handlers, live agents, and then an auto-response feedback as well of dialogue. So it's basically a cell phone without a cell phone. You know, you're dealing with a conversation that you can have between you and the handler, which is the live agent, and they constantly badger you. They constantly tell you what to look at, who to look at, how to talk, how to communicate, really critiquing. You know, it just goes on and on and on. It's like a grooming effect, but at times it's very torturous and very negative. And back in 2004, I was inducted into this program with the covert technology with the members of the band Rush, who actually did this induction along with Michael J. Mossbach. And he does have access, I think I've mentioned this before, through Ashkelon. He has covert access to the technology I speak about, this type of surveillance system, which is wireless communications, which is beyond voice to skull. It's synthetic telepathy. They have access to do this. They use it for recruitment, or they can use it for recruitment, brainwashing, or whatever else it is that they're using to entertain themselves.
And do you think the government is preparing to use this on the public?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure that they've used it in the past, not to this extreme extent. I would say that my case is very unique insofar as how I got through it and how I kept ascending out of it. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of people were psychotronically programmed and stalked to some degree throughout history and throughout the past. And I'm sure that they're ready to deploy it now. I mean, especially with all the things that are going on with our society. They don't want free will. They don't want people to speak for themselves. You see how everything is censored today. Books are censored. The mind is being censored. You know, people can't even go on radio shows half the time without being censored. As you and I both know, if it's mainstream, it's censored. So, you know, this type of thing is ready to be deployed. There's no doubt in my mind, no doubt at all.
I've had two of my most important guests attacked here recently in pretty dramatic ways. I'm not going to say who, and I'm not going to say under what conditions. But yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff going on. And let me play the first clip of the evening. This is from a great movie, again, called UFOs in the Bible. Patrick Cook had a lot to do with getting this movie out, and I've had him on the show before as well. Let's listen to this, and we'll get your comments, Larry.
Okay.
The Bible, a sacred because of an awesome supernatural force. But what if that force wasn't God? What if it was a UFO? In Ezekiel, what was that gleaming wheel within a wheel that descended on the prophet? In the Sodom and Gomorrah of Genesis, where did the devastating fire and brimstone come from? In Exodus, what was that presence in the sky that led Moses through the desert? Were these the actions of God? Or might these mysterious forces in disguise have been UFOs in the Bible? Throughout the Bible, mysterious aerial phenomena appear and alter the course of human history. To religious scholars, these stories are an infallible record of God's presence and godly events. But some modern-day researchers offer a different theory. Perhaps these stories really describe alien visitations.
Is it possible that extraterrestrials have been involved in human history for thousands of years, and if so, did they have contact with the biblical people? And as you look in the Bible, there are many reports of UFOs that contact biblical people. A chariot of fire that abducts Elijah and takes him off into the sky.
Polaris, do you think that these ancient contacts were actually intentionally distorted by the powers that be?
I would say, I'm looking back, just listening to that. We do have celestial races that have been interacting with us as starseeds for a very long time. So some of the data that hasn't been censored that says that they've had interaction with these different species, that's highly probable. Insofar as the Bible goes, and people may get upset about this, but it is man's version of God's law. Man created God in his own image. So I will tell you one thing, that this planet is a holographic, kind of a time machine beyond time, and it's actually very telepathic in its own way, this planet. If you look at it as an energy grid and take away the illusion of what you see from day to day, it really is a sentient consciousness. So when people are being transmitted to or being communicated to by a celestial source, then they have to use discernment, between what is censored and what is not, and especially during that timeline because there was censorship. There were a lot of people being brainwashed and manipulated with false realities then. So you had a lot of people wanting to